Hi there, good afternoon. This is Sky News Today. We start with that breaking news. Another 616 deaths have been recorded at hospitals across the UK. Let's turn to our health correspondent, Ashish Joshi, who's live for us in the newsroom. Ashish, just flesh out these figures for us.
The figures are for a 24-hour period across the UK. There's always a lag between the numbers collected individually, nation by nation, and the number that's been put out by the Department of Health and Social Care at this time on a daily basis. It relates to a 24-hour period from 5 p.m. the previous day to yesterday, and then released and then collated and released today. So that's a figure over the last 24 hours, not including today. The number has gone up by 616 more deaths, sadly, across all four nations of the UK, bringing the total to 18,738. And remember, Colin, and this is a very important thing to remember, is that this figure does not reflect deaths outside hospital. These are deaths which have taken place in hospital where people or patients have been tested for coronavirus. So that figure, the true figure for the UK, according to some experts, could be up to 40% higher, according to the modelling and the trajectory of the figures released by the Office for National Statistics, which does look at deaths in care home. If I can sort of give you an overview of what's happened in England this week, and that might help some people to understand where the trend for the deaths occurring in England certainly will give you an indication of what we're doing and what we're seeing in terms of the much wider picture. Of course, each death is a tragedy for every family that is having to grieve for a loved one. But on Monday, we had 430 people who died in England. Now, that number is the lowest this week, and that's because of the lag in collecting figures on a weekend. Then it jumped up to 778 on the Tuesday. And that's because we have now caught up with a weekend lag, and then 665 yesterday, and then down to 514. That, sadly, is 514 people who have died. That on its own is a very, very large number. And some people who have been listening to the daily press conferences given out at Downing Street by the Health Secretary, he said this week that we've probably seen the figure or the number plateau or reach its peak, and then we would see a plateau. What he means when he says reaching its peak, it doesn't mean that we'll suddenly stop at the number of deaths and then it just drops away completely. It means with this climb we've seen on the graph, the way it's been plotted, and it reaches a high. But to come down on the other side of that, you still have a very large number of deaths in their hundreds until we're finally out of this pandemic.
Ashish, thanks very much.